This Prezi was created by Jean Prockett, who gives her permission for educational use. Hello, I'm Mr. Chevalier, your freshman English teacher, and this is an introduction to the Russian Revolution. Wait, what is this? A history class? No, it is an English class, and we are talking about Animal Farm. One of the first things I want you to know about Animal Farm is that it's an allegory of the Russian Revolution. So in order to understand the purpose of the text, you need to know some basic facts of the revolution. First of all, an allegory is a device in which characters symbolize or represent bigger ideas or concepts. In a way, it's an extended metaphor. The key characters in Animal Farm symbolize the big players of the real-life Russian Revolution. So here's a timeline of the Russian Revolution. The revolution begins in 1905, and the trouble starts with this man. This is Tsar Nicholas II. He came into power in 1894. In 1904 and 1905, Russia fought a war with Japan. The country did not favor the war, and Russia got the tar kicked out of it during those 2 years. Because the war left the country in unfavorable conditions with 11-hour workdays, grueling factory work, food shortages, and starvation, many of Russia's workers revolted. Hey, you'd be irate too. On one occasion, the workers went to the Tsar's palace with a petition and were met with gunfire by the guards. Some reports say that as many as 1,000 people were killed in this conflict. This is known as Bloody Sunday and considered the start of the active revolution. Moving forward to 1914. World War I began, and Tsar Nicholas thought that Russia's participation in World War I would help Russian prestige after its embarrassing defeat by Japan in the 1905 war. But instead of bringing unity, the war did the opposite. People of the country were starving, soldiers were sent to front lines without guns, and the public blamed Tsar Nicholas. So, Nicholas decides to go to the battle lines to fight with his soldiers in hopes of boosting morale for his troops and his country. However, this meant that while he was gone, the home front was in the control of his wife, Alexandra, whom the Russians didn't exactly trust. She was part German, and one of her aides, Rasputin, who was hired to cure her son's hemophilia, was scrutinized harshly by the public. These further issues with Tsar Nicholas's reign caused the Russian public to revolt. February to July of 1917 saw the February Revolution, where massive numbers of people went on strike. On February 27th, at least 200,000 workers were on strike. Soldiers even joined them. On the 28th of February, Nicholas was asked to abdicate or give up his throne. A provisional government took over, and on July 8th, a guy named Alexander Kerensky became leader of the provisional government. But he refused to get Russia out of World War I, which still upset the people of the country. On July 19th, Kerensky ordered the arrest of the Bolshevik Party. He had them arrested because they protested against the war. The Bolsheviks were essentially the Communist Party of Russia. Okay, time out. Before you understand the Bolsheviks, you should know the influence of Karl Marx. Karl Marx is known as the father of communism. In 1847, way before any of this went down, Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, which is essentially a treatise of his beliefs. People who follow these ideals are called Marxists. Marxism is pretty complicated, but here are some key ideas to keep in mind. Number one, he believed private ownership of land should be abolished. Number two, he believed in equal distribution of wealth, a classless system. Number three, He believed in a communal life where everyone shares in the prosperity. One of his slogans was, "Workers of the world, unite." Marx died before all of this happened, and his ideas were realized by Vladimir Lenin, who was the leader of this Bolshevik party that Kerensky had just arrested. This leads to the October Revolution. 1917, October. The October Revolution. So Lenin led the Bolsheviks in the October Revolution to oust Kerensky. The Communist Party was behind him and his Marxist ideas. Lenin is the head of the Bolshevik Party during this time. It is rumored that while in power, Lenin had the royal family killed. It is generally accepted that many of them were shot to death in a basement. 1917 to 1922 saw the Russian Civil War. After the Bolsheviks, now called the Communists, or the Reds, took control, anti-communist enemies, calling themselves the Whites, fought within the country. The U.S. supported the Whites' side and opposed communism. Ironically, peasants suffered the most from this conflict. To support the end of the war, which the Reds won, Lenin came up with the NEP, or New Economic Policy. The tenets of this policy were that the peasant farmers were allowed to keep some of their foodstuff to sell for their own profit. The government would regulate supply and production, a form of limited capitalism. It would create a bank to industrialize Russia. And it would also lay the foundation for full-on communism, preparing Russia for a predicted worldwide communist revolution. Lenin also changes Russia's name to the USSR, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. 1924. Lenin dies, and new leadership is needed. In 1924, Lenin, Russia's charismatic leader, died, and the Communist Party needed a new leader. Incidentally, his body is still preserved, and you can go see it if you're ever on a field trip to Moscow. There were two contenders for power. One of them was this man, Leon Trotsky. Leon Trotsky was one of the leaders of the October Revolution, and like Lenin, he was a brilliant public speaker. He was also the former leader of foreign affairs, and he favored a worldwide communist revolution. And he was opposed by this man, Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin didn't exactly follow Marx, and he had played an administrative role during the October Revolution. He eventually gained control of the Communist Party in 1928 and replaced Lenin's plan with a 5-year plan and believed in communism focused in one country, not necessarily worldwide. We can talk about his horrible, violent, oppressive rise to power later. What you need to know for Animal Farm are your characters and who they represent. Farmer Jones represents Tsar Nicholas II. And Old Major in the novel represents a combination of Marx and Lenin. The character Snowball represents Leon Trotsky. Napoleon represents Stalin himself. And there'll be more to come. But before we go, there are two definitions about Animal Farm that I want you to be aware of. And the first one is fable. In a fable, animals, plants, and other inanimate objects are given human-like qualities that lead to a moral lesson at the end of the story. The second one is satire. Satire is writing that is most often humorous and serves, ironically, as social criticism. Society's shortcomings are ridiculed and made fun of to make a point or shame society into improvement.